What's up, guys? It is Sam here. Good morning. It is 6:45. I'm going to go and work shortly, but I wanted to talk about that three-family tax foreclosure. So before I do that, make sure you press that subscribe button, and there's a little bell notification. Just gently tap on that little bell notification until it gets the parentheses around it. It's kind of like a halo effect. And with that being said, I put in two offers on two separate properties in the last week or so, and both of them seem to progress. They both seem to be progressing forwards. So I'm going to talk about the first one, and then we'll touch base on the second one in a moment. There is a three-family up the street from where I live, probably about 70 seconds away from where I currently live, and about 1 minute from my office, and it is right on the main strip out here where I live. The person who owns the property hasn't been paying any bills for almost 10 years. So they have a lien from the city in terms of taxes. They have a lien from the neighboring city for a loan they took out for redevelopment that's due on sale. Then there's another lien for utility bills that were never paid. And then there's another lien for the mortgage. So you're saying, why the fuck would you do that? It's going to be a shitload of money. Well, the property has comps somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, say 225, 230 on the very low end to say 275 on the high end. Somewhere in that range. And if I went on the low end to say 230, right? And then I subtract out all the liens, basically left with zero. But one of those liens, the mortgage, I can get for about 30,000. And why? Because the person who owns the mortgage, I know, first of all. Second of all, the person hasn't been paying them, and they don't have necessarily the resources to get it taken care of. So they just want something for the note. I'm going to go back and forth between note and mortgage. Those things are the same thing. So the note that they have is for about $100,000, and they haven't been being paid. The taxes are for about 90. The utility lien is for about 3,500, and the other lien from the neighboring city for the redevelopment of the property was for about $24,000. So together, all of them are over $200,000. But there's going to be, right, so let's see. You go through and you just take a second to add this up, right? So we've got 90,000, we've got 24,000, we've got 3,500, and we've got 100K, right? So when you take those and you add them all up, that's 118. Right, so the property is only worth like 200 on the low end. I think it's going to be higher than that, but on the low end, I'm just, for all my analysis, I'm using 230 number for the value I can get on the property. So that means that leaves like 13,000, 12,500, right? And then I've got to pay. I'm paying somebody to help with the process because it's the first time going through this. And that's $6,000. So that puts me at 224, right? So when this all gets said and done, right, we're about $230,000 because paying her a little bit to get out, plus paying somebody to help me out with the deal. So we're left at 230K. But then you subtract out 70K. And we're left at 160. Right, because the note here for 100, I'm going to be paying about 34. And I can even structure it so that I pay this off over the course of the next, couple of years if I want to. But what I'm going to do is, so 230 after everything, right? Because this 13,000, 12,500 is going to get eaten up between like the 5 or 6 grand I've given her and the 5 or 6 grand I'm paying to have all this done, right? So, and I'm sure that I could have done that portion of that cheaper, but this is just the first time. So I don't think I would go the same route in the future, but at least it was a great learning experience. So then I'll be finished with the property, a 3-family for 160. That at a minimum I should be able to sell for 230, more than likely 240 or 250. And when you run the comps on that, the rental rate you can get is, and I took about a 20 to 30% discount on each unit's rent, right? So there's, I think, a 3-family, a 2-family, and a 1-family, or a studio or something like that. So when you run the numbers on those, I got those from Rentometer, which you can get an average in the area by plugging the address, and then I cut them all back by about 20-30%, and that comes out to be about $2,700 a month. And there should be a little bit over $1,000 in cash flow every month when you factor in maintenance and a property manager, right? So I'm gonna probably have a property man. I will probably manage it initially, but then I'll hire a property manager. So I wanted to factor that into the numbers. So if I can get that to cash flow, and these are on the low end for the rental rates, but I also raised the cost for a couple of these other things. I think I raised up taxes. I think I raised the maintenance. I think I factored in about 200 or 250 total. Right? So if there's 3 units, like divided by 250 is $80 per month per unit. And I have a place in Florida, and the amount of maintenance that I have in there is very low. So what ends up happening is that 250 builds over time, right? So in 4 months you have $1,000 sitting there, and in 8 months you have $2,000 sitting there. But if a hot water tank goes, right? I mean, hot water tank's like, I don't know, $600, $500, $700, and then another couple $100 to get installed. So say all in is $1,200 if you go with a bigger unit. You know what I mean? Higher efficiency one, $1,200, and you've got it already paid for, right? Or if say you need to replace a window, window's cheap. The window's like $200 and maybe $150 to get it installed. You know what I mean? So these numbers, I think there's a lot of trepidation from people who are more unfamiliar with things, and that introduces risk that people, because the unfamiliarity is risk to people. So even if, and I'm about to talk about that second property, even if something were to happen with the second property, because the 3-family I'm going to hold, the second property I'm going to flip, I knew going through the process, right? This is a really fucking weird one, right? Like purchasing a note from somebody, and then there's liens on the property on top of that, and then doing the negotiation and paying this lady something to get out of the property. Like, you know what I mean? What's going on with that one? So that I knew that even if I make, if like, you know what I mean? So, and by the way, there's not a ton of, there's not a shitload of work. Like, I didn't do a full inspection because I just met with the lady. But even if there was 40 grand worth of work that I needed to do on that, I factored in about 35. But after talking to her and just seeing part of the property, I think it's going to be substantially less than 35. But say if it was 40, right? That puts this number at 200, right? And then you have to sell, and so you have selling costs and all that shit, right? So you figure, 10 grand for that, and then you're left with $20,000. Like, even if it was just $20,000, the amount that I would learn through this process and grow as a person, putting myself in that uncomfortable situation, the things that I've never done before or experienced before, I've done that many times. And the real ROI is not the cash, that 20 grand. The real ROI is taking action and putting myself in that situation to force myself to grow. And that's something that I think is tremendously missed in a lot of people's calculations about if they're going to make money. Because it's very myopic in a lot of people's minds when they think about things like this. Now, if you've done multiple of these properties or things like this, then the ROI of action is much lower, right? Because you've done it 3 or 4 times, so you've already learned a shitload more. I've never done this before, so maybe going from things like this, where it's $150,000 to $200,000 property and it's foreclosure, maybe you should do something that's like, I don't know, $1 million, right? Find one that's $1 million. Put yourself in that uncomfortable situation to learn and grow. Put yourself in that situation which is going to force you to get better as a person or lose. Right? Like, I'm not concerned about losing here. But put yourself in that situation where you constantly have to learn and grow. Now, with this property number 2, right, and there's actually a third property I'll touch on, but with the property number 2, I put an offer in, and if you want to see the exact offer breakdown, check out the channel for that. How to submit an offer for a flip or something like that. And essentially the say like a B minus B, like a B quality type renovation is, I factored in about $75,000 worth of repairs on this property, like substantial, right? And then holding costs and the soft costs and the closing costs and all that shit, right? And I would probably be able to make 35 on that one. So I put in an offer for the price that I could sell for, the ARV, after repair value. And the only reason I know some of these terms is because I put myself in that situation where it's like, wow, there seems to be a tremendous amount of opportunity in that arena. I want to start learning. And that was, maybe a year ago. So I just continued to learn, read, listened to stuff, asked questions, talked to people, and I just continued to learn, so that I could put myself in the right mindset so that I was able to grab that opportunity when it presented itself. So the ARV, probably 210, I factored in 200 to be conservative. And I offered 85. You're like, how would somebody ever do that? Well, remember there's the holding costs and the carrying costs. So you have like the financing costs, right, of the property, so private money. You have the carrying costs like lights, water, electricity, all that kind of stuff, heating. You also have the taxes on the property. You have paying for the lawyer and the process to get all the paperwork done and all that kind of stuff. And then you have all the repairs, right? So once you factor all that shit in there, it's over 75,000 is just the repairs. This property is not in super great condition at all. So once all that's factored in there, right, you basically would finish at somewhere around 165-ish, 160, in that range. Probably about 165, right? However, because it's my first time, especially doing it, like I own one property, but I've never done a flip. and I've never bought a three family or one that was in foreclosure or tax liens. So with this one, when I went through and did all the repairs, right? So if you wanted to do an estimate on something, if you own a business or doing something like this, you literally break down, right? So you go through and you're like, well, what am I going to have to do? Boom, X. Boom, Y. Z. All right? A. B. That's a 3. E. D, right? So these are all the things that you need to do on the property, right? This is the windows. This is replacing drywall. This is fucking painting. This is boom, boom, boom. And just go across the board, right? And then you get a price for all these, right? And you add that shit up. And there's a little thing called the internet, which allows you to do this, right? And as I mentioned, some of these numbers are conservative, right? So which means that they might be on the higher end of these ranges when you do some Googling. And then I added a project management fee of $4,000 in there. So not that $4,000 is going to cover a shitload of stuff, but at the same time, $4,000 covers a shitload of stuff. And that is just basically my time and that kind of thing because, as I mentioned, I've never done this before, so I'm not going to not seize the opportunity, but I'm going to put the numbers out there in a way. My one hand is fucking freezing. I'm going to put the numbers out there in such a way that would reduce the mental risk that I think I have, right? Where this, when I'm go through, right, I go through and do the numbers, and then I went through and did the numbers on like what I think is much more probable, right? So you can run the numbers on how I did it based on some of the data in there, and like that I see things could cost, right? And then I go through and I run the numbers based on more of my pre-existing knowledge, right? I don't know, right? I have a property and I've done a bunch of renovations on that property myself, but doing all this other shit, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily know how to do any of it. Well, I mean, I could figure it out. Like, there's a little thing called the internet, but so I did a very objective way of looking at it. Then bringing in my knowledge base, I actually think that the numbers would be probably closer to 60,000 in repairs because I was more conservative on these numbers to play it safe. And then I was thinking 4 months, so I put down 5 months. I was thinking like 90 days, so I put down 4 months, and then at least for the initial numbers, and then I rounded it out to 5 months to play it safe. And so when that one is going through the process, right, the individual wants to leave the state. So the thing that's holding that back is just finding the right opportunity to allow this person to get out of the state and make it as easy of a transition for them as possible. So potentially, I could have 2 properties within the next month or so, and that's a lot. And then there's a third property. Try to do that one. The third property. That one I'm going to take a look at on Saturday. So if you guys have any questions about any of these things, let me know. The one on Saturday is the ARV on that one. It's probably like 110, maybe 115, so there's a much smaller margin on that one. Also, I don't know if this person's trying to get out of the property super quick or not, but I'll see what they, you know what I mean? I'm going to go in there and just see what they say and then listen to their story and what they're trying to do, and then I'm going to make an offer. Probably not on Saturday, but probably make the offer on Sunday or Monday and see if they go for it. That one I think is in probably the best condition out of all 3 properties, and that one I might just wholesale that one, do some fucking what they like to call some lipstick on a pig. I think I've heard that term before, but basically, right, you go through and maybe do like $3,000 or $4,000 worth of work on the property, right? Go through and put some fucking paint on shit and change out just very small things, very cosmetic type of things to make it look nice. Maybe go through and do some caulking in the bathroom and the kitchen and stuff like that, and then go through and do painting and everything, and then go through and do it again. Or just literally wholesale it to somebody else who wants to do anything with it. But anyways, if you guys have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. Instagram is in the description. Reach out to me on Instagram and say what's up. Hope you guys create a fucking epic weekend. I'll talk to you soon.